Welcome back. I want to welcome you all back. I trust you've had some time to think about or reflect on yesterday's session. I know I did. It was a lot going on there. What a day. All the winners had incredible stories. Hirok, AOT, CI Financial, Innova Post, Boomerang FX. Wow, I have to tell you, those were the winners. And we had a really incredible slate of nominees. So we started out with Rob Meikle, the former CIO of the City of Toronto, and he led a discussion with some of those nominees sharing their successes and challenges. Watch it if you missed it. Wow. We had Steve Heck come in from Gartner, and he had a scorecard for success. And I remember, you remember things coming out of this. And if you wouldn't mind, if you know, as I'm reflecting on these and as you go through, put in the chat what you remember from yesterday. I got this thing, product management, not just project management, from Steve, and a whole pile more, but I'm still thinking about that. And if you missed the 2 videos from CI Financial on how to do digital transformation, go back and check them out. That's all I'm going to say. We had other great presentations too. I don't want to take away from anybody's. Cloudflare's presentation on security warned us against an accidental cloud strategy. I'm going to be thinking about that one for the next few days in there. And Deborah Christmas and ITWC's Fawn Annan. Do you think I'd be able to say the name of my own company? ITWC's Fawn Annan, confronting the challenges and opportunities in managing diversity in the workplace. What a day. If you missed it, it's recorded, so you'll be able to get it. But if you enjoyed that, strap in for today, because today we're going to look at the future of digital transformation. Now, we got some great speakers and panels, and yes, we might even have a few laughs. But I guarantee you will take something away from today, no matter what it is, that will help you to plan for a future where every company, no matter what industry will be affected by digital transformation. And if you think that's hyperbole, as the President of the United States would say, it's not. This is something that every industry is going to be affected. We'll show you that today. And there's more. We'll be celebrating the accomplishments of 5 Canadian leaders who have surmounted these challenges and helped their organizations thrive. There's opportunity to learn from these stories, so I urge you to pay close attention as they're presented as the ITWC's Canadian CIO of the Year Awards. And they'll all be inducted into the Canadian CIO Hall of Fame, quite justly. Now, more on that in a few minutes. Forgive me, there's a little housekeeping. If you've been here before, sing along with me, but there's a little housekeeping required to make sure people get the most out of the time you're spending with us today, and here it is. So while most of the conference action takes place on the screen where I am now, there's a lot to see on this platform, and this is our own platform. We've designed it. Scroll down and you'll find white papers, recording, newsletters, events you can sign up for, all kinds of great stuff. Now, to my left, is that my left, I think, or below me on some devices, you'll see a live chat box. You can chat with the other attendees there and with me between the sessions I'm doing with you here. So be sure to enter your name, check the terms and conditions, and that's it. You can participate. And if you're going in there, please put in something that you remembered from yesterday that you thought was great, or comments of any kind. And if you hear something that's interesting and you want to share it with a wider external audience, please go to Twitter and use the hashtag DXAwards. That's hashtag DXAwards. And you can check it out on the live Twitter feed right here on the site. Now, none of this, the platform, the event, none of it would be possible without the support of our sponsors. So I urge you to check out on the platform for their messaging and some of their stuff, and maybe download it. And if they call you, please take the call and tell them thank you for making this important networking and learning opportunity possible. Our sponsors today are Cloudflare, Dynatrace, TalkDesk, Auth0, and Okta. They are a who's who of services in the digital economy. Our supporters include Gartner and the CIO Association of Canada. Now, that's the housekeeping. On with the show. First up on the opening keynote is Jorge Lopez, Vice President and Distinguished Analyst with Gartner. He'll capture some of the excitement and the energy around digital transformation and the world of almost infinite possibility that lies ahead. Now, this isn't the time to think small. It's the time to act big and fast. So the question I'll pose to you, are you ready to go digital and build the future that awaits? And on that, Jorge, over to you.
Today, we're going to talk about how visionary companies disrupt entire industries and create a new future. Hello, my name is Jorge Lopez with Gartner, and we're here to talk about the visionary path to digital business transformation is through the development of digital business capabilities. We can provide top line as well as bottom line improvements by disrupting entire industries and creating new futures. So, what is a digital business capability? The formal model we have at Gartner shows that there are 4 elements to the business model and 4 elements to the operating model of any business. In the very center in orange are the capabilities, which are crucially important because they are the foundation for the business model. They affect the value proposition, the customer, and the financial model. And they're also the place that channels the value streams, the governance, and the resources within the enterprise on an operating basis. And what this does is connects the operating model to the business model and is foundational. The examples of that we'll be talking about today include Starlink's communications networks, fully automated mines, and robo-advisors. The question is, why is this important now? Well, here's an interesting slide for you. Here is the disruptive impact of a visionary company. We're talking here about SpaceX. SpaceX has been well known and documented for its ability to rapidly deploy some of the lowest cost rocketry in the world because of its reusability. The reusability comes because of their focus on using artificial intelligence, for example, to help land these complex and expensive rockets safely on autonomous ocean barges. And you have massive redundancy of rocket engines to help to reduce the risk. But you can see right here several things. One is that SpaceX is able to launch 1 flight a week now. But the main point here is take a look at the payload for the current Falcon 9 Heavy, which is 16 tons at a cost of $62 million. And then we have the SpaceX Starship, which is 100 and actually going to be closer to 150 tons at $2 million. They continue to make breakthroughs in overall cost, reaching productivity that is threatening essentially all the other players that are in the marketplace today. And you can see that green line shows that they're now almost 10 times more rocket launches than anyone else right now that's in that industry. Let's also take a look at another company that gives you a sense of why it's so important to be visionary. And in this case, we're talking about what's happening to the cost and speed of mining critical materials. We're talking about the Syama mine, which is in West Africa. They've been able to reduce their costs 10% with a goal of reducing it overall 25% in 5 years. What the Syama mine does is essentially ensure that everything below the surface is fully autonomous, fully automated, and that people essentially can manage at the top management level above the ground, everything that's going on underneath. Machines can deliver 22 hours of work versus human, which is about 15 hours per day. What we're seeing here is that by envisioning an entire way of doing work that essentially displaces the old ways of doing work with new ones that, in fact, are far more productive, are of enormous impact in moving forward. So what should we do about this? Well, here's what visionary companies do. And I have 3 examples. Now, we're using a model that's really built upon a mountaintop model. So let's just go over that first. On the far right, you can see there's a mountaintop, and we have 3 examples, all delineated in different colors. We have a staging camp, which is before that. This says these are the capabilities that ultimately help to drive the mountaintop. And then we have the first base camp, which is used to drive the staging camp. Let's take a look then at the situation with SpaceX and what they've been doing. No secret that the founder of SpaceX, Elon Musk, he's intent on essentially establishing settlements on Mars. Now, to get there, what he needed to do was have let's call it a money pop, a source of funds that from an existing business that could actually finance that. So what he did was he created then Starlink. Starlink is in the neighborhood of 30,000 satellites, going to 40,000 satellites, we think, which will connect every single physical part of the Earth. Today, 40% of the world is unconnected to the internet, if you can believe that. And by the time Starlink is done, that number will drop closer to 10%. And the question really will become from a strategy perspective, and this is really for you all to consider, what will you do when you now have almost a third of the Earth connected to the internet that you didn't have before? What opportunities does it open up for you? What businesses will you build? Now, to be able to achieve that capability from Starlink, what SpaceX had to do was find how can we deliver these satellites up into space at a cost that's well below anything that's known today. And that led to the idea of the reusable rocket boosters and ultimately to SpaceX, which became now, as we showed earlier, the impact of this is really difficult to overstate because what it's done is redefine an entire industry. They're going to have entire rockets are going to be landing on the launch pad they started from using rocket engines that are capable of being reused within 1 hour after they land. This just is a completely different definition of what the world of space is going to be about. But it shows you, if you look at the process here, they're really thinking of the world in terms of what are we going to build that will then help us to power our next capability and our next business. And in each case, which is even more important, is the idea that they figured out a way to make each step monetizable. In wealth management, we also have seen this as well, in that we're looking at how, if I look to the far right, the mountaintop, where banking wants to get to is decentralized finance is essentially autonomous in nature. To be able to do that, they need to have technology which is actually quite well deployed at this point. It's robo-advisors. Robo-advisors are really designed to help you make your investment decisions. Today, robo-advisors are just at nearly $500 billion in assets under management, growing at 30% per year. So the expectations in the next 2 or 3 years will be at 1.2, 1.4 trillion in assets under management. Now, to get there, the first base camp was something that many of you have seen before, is investment tools. I mean, if I was to start out and say, if you ever use Quicken and use those tools to figure out, okay, when am I going to retire? What decision I need to make? This became then the foundation for what led to becoming robo-advisors, because now you had the tools available to build them. So here we have in wealth management showing how you can think about your business going forward. If you have a mountaintop that says, we want essentially our operations, our branches, our brokers, whatever, to be fully autonomous at some point, then what are the steps between now and there that can help us to ensure that we reach there with the full capabilities needed to be successful in it? And finally, that we have mining. Over the last decade and a half, they've proven to be one of the most sophisticated, technologically advanced industries in the world. If you started out with saying, okay, ultimately we want a fully autonomous mine. We want to have a place where we don't require people to do this anymore and run the whole mine. It could be an outdoor pit. Along the way, before you get to being fully autonomous, you're going to have something that's fully automated, and you're going to be leveraging a lot of vehicles that have the capabilities within them to move autonomously and to, say, drill holes, to haul materials, to even process within the mine some of the things that need to be pre-processed before they get put into a deeper processing. Caterpillar, working with BHP Billiton, developed the systems that were required to be put in place that then allowed these enormous vehicles to go without a driver and driving all day long right to the place where they need to be loaded, all the way back for me to drop off and haul the materials, drop it off, and do that again all day long. That was the beginning of the steps for the fully autonomous mine. So where they are right now is a fully automated mine with reports that we have 2 fully autonomous mines that are now capable and deploying as we speak. But if you get the picture here, is ultimately, here's a way to conceptualize the future built upon technologies that in many cases are known today, but deployed in a way that provides significant competitive advantage, as well as the ability to drive revenues that fund then even more sophisticated and more profitable businesses later on. So we think about then this mountaintop base camp model. It comes down to some very essential capabilities for transformation. Transformation, as we all know, is large, it's hard and risky. What you need to be able to do is break it down into essential and monetizable base camp capabilities so you can make money on the way to transformation. So in conclusion, let me provide some recommendations here. The first is you need to pick a mountaintop vision. What capabilities will deliver the sort of our earnings growth that are meaningful results for your company? Not a simple thing. You want to get your senior management team together to consider what should that vision be. The next recommendation is take the long view, but capture short-term opportunities. Can we lay out a base camp on the way to the mountaintop where we can make money and grow and sort of solidify a platform of a position that can help us ensure the success of our longer-term vision, while also delivering some money along the way so that the business does not have to be waiting for revenues to be coming in, say, in 5 years or whatever. They'll be coming in within months or days. The third of 4 is take an industry view. Does your mountaintop vision put pressure on your competition to change the rules of competition? And can you compete on the speed of innovation? If we're seeing anything, we're seeing how this pressure to keep developing and improving is saying we need to compete on the speed of innovation to ensure that we're able to provide the sort of capabilities that will drive our competitive advantage into the future. And finally, and in conclusion, take a today view. What more can I do today to keep our project driving forward and growing? What is important now? If you take these into account, you'll find you'll be putting yourself in a place that leads to a leadership position in your industry. I'm Jorge Lopez of Gartner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jorge. Wonderful, wonderful in there. Now, we want to address the challenges in that opening session, and to do that, we brought together some leading executives to share how they're accelerating change in their organizations and how they're trying to stay ahead of the curve. This panel is sponsored by Dynatrace, and it's moderated by John Hutter, Dynatrace's Vice President and Country Manager. I think you're going to love it. So with 26 years of experience leading teams and transformation efforts, John has been recognized and rewarded with numerous accolades by his peers and other organizations he's worked for. And as a thought leader who drives ideation, innovation, and technical direction, he's the perfect moderator for this panel. And this panel also includes some great people. Mallory Greene, the founder and CEO of Irene Cremations. Yeah, you heard me right, Irene Cremations in there. We'll talk about that. And Thomas Wardman, the Chief Technology Officer with the Chartered Professional Accountants Association of Canada, CPA Canada. Now, at first glance, these 2 organizations we mentioned may not spring to mind as being on the leading edge of digital transformation, but you're going to be surprised. And I hope it will open your eyes to the idea that every organization, no matter what the industry, is going to be affected by digital transformation. Take it away, panel.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome everyone. I'm super excited to be today's moderator for such an important topic. First off, I'd like to say we just heard an excellent presentation from Jorge. He's literally thrown down the gauntlet for innovation in organizations. I don't think anyone could argue with his main assertion that innovation is accelerating, as well becoming more determinative in business success. That said, the fact still remains that in general, there's Canadian companies that are still well behind our international counterparts and competitors when it comes to innovation. Today, we're going to unlock this. And I'm delighted to say that we have Mallory Greene, founder and CEO of Irene.com, with us today. Welcome, Mallory.
Thank you so much for having me.
As well, we have Thomas Wardman, Chief Technology Officer with the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada and 2020 CIO of the Year in the nonprofit sector. Welcome, Thomas.
Hi, John. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Folks, some of the things you're going to hear today and have them talk about are the imperative for innovation in their organizations, some of the key restraints and obstacles they face, and how they're addressing the need for accelerated innovation. Again, welcome to both of you. Let's get started with a bit of a warm-up question. So first off, could each of you tell the audience a little bit about your business? Thomas, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, so thanks, John. I'm with the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. We're one of the largest national accounting organizations in the world, and we're a respected voice in business, government, education, and not-for-profit sectors.
Fantastic having you here. And Mallory, yourself.
Yes, so my name is Mallory Greene. I am the CEO and co-founder of Irene Cremations. We are an online funeral arranging platform. Irene is really a modern approach to funeral planning. I think when you think of the traditional way to make a funeral arrangement, you walk in somewhere, there's a lot of paperwork. It's a very outdated industry. I mean, I don't think it's really changed within the past 100 years. And so we are really focused on simplicity during a really difficult time. We're focused on affordability so anyone can access really high quality death care, and flexibility, which is really just about educating people on what their options are during the death care process and providing them with the tools to kind of continue on through the process. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about innovation.
Yes, fantastic. Two very different industries, and exciting to have you here. So thanks so much. We've heard that innovation is accelerating, and we've all heard it everywhere. I'm going to assume that you don't dispute this, but perhaps you could comment on what it is that restrains innovation in organizations. Is it regulation, risk aversion? Where do you see the challenges, and how can we overcome them? Mallory, we'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, I think it really depends on, we're, like you said, we're totally different, right? We're in totally different industries. And I think in different size of organizations, from my experience, regulation has always been a hindrance to innovation and technology growth in Canada. Canada generally is pretty behind on innovation and technology. And I saw that at my time at Wealthsimple. I was previously at Wealthsimple, and we were one of the first fintech companies that existed in Canada. The regulatory environment really wasn't built for any type of different approach to financial services. And I've seen that in the funeral industry as well. The funeral industry is essentially regulated per province, and each province, the legislation is very old, and regulators are maybe not so keen on innovation because it hasn't existed up until something like Irene has. And so I think regulation has been a decent amount of hindrance to our approach and our ability to move quickly. Although I would say that what we've seen is many of the governments and ministers have been open to it. I think it's more so on the board sides of those who are actually regulating the industry. The other thing I'll just say, I think within industries that complacency is quite common, especially if something has existed in one way for so long. There is no reason for them to change that if it's working for them. And I know when I first launched Irene, people often told me, well, you should just build software for funeral homes instead of building a direct to consumer business. And I just said there's essentially no way that they would ever want to use our services because there's nothing that's pushing them towards change, right? There has to be businesses like Irene that exist to kind of say, okay, maybe we need to start thinking differently. And we saw that at Wealthsimple when we first launched. None of the banks wanted anything to do with robo-advisors. And then you saw within a few years, they were all launching robo-advisors. So I think businesses like ours need to exist. It's very painful to exist in the early days, but
yes, absolutely.
You have to have, I think that's what drives innovation, right? People who are just so like they're keen and they're going to push forward no matter kind of the barriers that exist.
Amazing. Two very different industries per se, but very similar constraints and or challenges when you look at it. So amazing. Yeah. And Thomas, how about yourself?
So I would say that for myself, I've been in the not-for-profit sector for a number of years now, and I think this constrains us the most. It's really culture. At the end of the day, I
Yeah.
think that, there's elements of always like every really industry has regulation, has their components to it, but I'd say not for profit really it's that culture piece to it. A lot of the organizations across the country are smaller in their nature. They tend to be more very much focused on their individual causes and the membership that's part of those, and as a result it's really been focused on trying to deliver the mission as much as possible, and that's come in sometimes the cost of just getting it done versus embracing technology. So just getting it done means sometimes we do copy and paste. We do a lot of things just to make it work as opposed to stepping back and then doing it. The other component is it's also hard in the not-for-profit sector to do investment, right? That's a big piece of
Right.
it. When you're fighting for every dollar and you're trying to allocate dollars to programming, which is the most important part of any type of not-for-profit or charity organization, investing back in the technology is a big expense. And it's very hard for the organizations to find the financing or the dollars to be able to say, I'm going to invest the large sums of money it takes to move from this sort of like behind positions to forward. So what I try to do is I try to bring the position of how do we do incremental investment? How do we make this not so scary, right? Because the thing is, technology can be very challenging and difficult for various professions to take into, and I've worked with doctors and lawyers and others. So as a result, it's a matter of how do you make it easy? How do you make it approachable? And if you make the
Right.
technology simple, easier to use, and that's really putting a customer-based focus or a people-based focused on it. There's a really good book, The Technology Fallacy, which talks about all of that, which is really going through the process of saying, it's people-centered transformation. And if you really make it around the people, I find that you can really break it down. Because otherwise you have you have typical things like silos and things that sort of hold you back. And, technology is not supposed to be in a silo. It's supposed to be across everything. So
Absolutely.
I'd say
That's
that
right.
would be how that's how we're addressing that type of challenge.
And it breaks down those silos, correct? Or it should.
Yeah, it should. It should break it down. The reality would be is that I think Jim had talked about this years ago, that the fact that we have Star Trek at home, but there's Flintstones at work. It's still very much that scenario that we sort of
Yeah.
face. And the idea is, how do you take that consumerism and bring it in to the sector? I've looked at it and said, myself, the way that's been embracing it has been to try to find solutions that really do make financial sense as well as the people sense behind them.
Got it. Absolutely. When you talk about the people and the customers, um, you know, you both deal with fairly, or I use the word fairly, but absolutely conservative audiences. How does that constrain innovation, or does it create opportunity for you?
I'd like to say a bit of both. I think a bit of both. I think, within my industry, I'm not targeting one specific demographic, right? I mean, we service people throughout all different generations. And so I always like to use the term meeting people where they are. I think kind of just what Thomas was just saying is, technology seems very scary to a lot of people. And so how can we make people feel trusting of technology and feel comfortable with what we're providing. And I think that's just being flexible on kind of how you exist today and realizing that's going to be very different from how you exist 5-10 years from now. I mean, that's the point of innovation, is you're constantly iterating and pivoting on how you kind of meet people based on what's happening within consumers. And so I would like to say that there can be hesitation from the consumer perspective. I was just talking to my family the other day about this, and really, when we got our very first customer at Irene, that was like the first person who trusted us with something that was entirely new within the entire country, and that's an incredible milestone to have.
Absolutely.
But I think it's just taking it one step at a time and building that trust and really listening to consumers. Like, what is their hesitation? I know someone recently said to me, my family they were hesitating on using Irene because it was technology focused. And so really breaking that down of what makes them nervous to use a innovative platform. And I actually think that's just about language. We how we've changed our language over time since when we first launched to today is very different. I always like to say we are a funeral business enabled by tech. We are not a tech business. And I think that's really key, is just looking at the industry as a whole.
Absolutely. Amazing. And Thomas, anything else to add there?
Yeah, I would say that it's very similar to Mallory. I think that
Yeah.
the component here is that, do conservative audiences and versus this one, do they constrain innovation? Well, I prefer to think of it as adding rigor and due diligence to what we're trying to do, right?
Right.
There's a reason. Like, for example, you think about all these regulated professions. The reason they're regulated is because they have life and death implications, or very societal implications if we don't have that regulation. So that needs to be there to make sure consumers are protected and as society as a whole is protected. So we have that. The opportunity behind that is really helping to embrace that due diligence portion of it, and really then take and say, look, we've done our right stuff, we have it. Here's how you do something new, and it's about really bringing that new lens or different vision into it. Like, Mallory, as you're disrupting your industry, you're doing, that's very similar to what we try to do with all the professions that have to deal with this. Where we're trying to make sure that I think all of them are dealing with the same challenge. Generally speaking, of how do we modernize? How do we capture that? The new not the millennial, but the new generation coming after the millennial generation. So those are all questions we're all asking and grappling with, and the technology has to be part of the solution to that set. It can't be doing it on paper, or a fax machine might work for in a small little office for a long time, but that won't work in the future. So the question is, how do you do this and embrace it that way?
And give people the tools to embrace it, right? I think,
absolutely,
like you said, it is so important. It's like critical to have regulation, especially when it comes to people's finances or their loved ones, and that's why it exists. And so I don't think that innovation has to mean that you are, and I think all of us can agree that means that you're not within the regulation. I think it's important to constantly look at legislation and change it to innovate to where we are today. But I do think that there's something to be said about the importance of, like you said, it's about rigor.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Absolutely. And with that, we've dealt with talking about some of these obstacles in that. What are the keys to innovation? Could you share some of what are the keys to innovation in your experience? Thomas, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So I think the big thing is keeping it simple, right? Is a big one, right? Having people opt in, meaning that, you don't want to drag people along. You want to make this something they want to be part of, and really building effective teams. I think this was really the key to how I see innovation and working through. Because if you get the consensus and you get the other changes that go with that, it makes people want to be part of it, right? People want to be part of a win. People want to be part of a winning thing at the end of the day. If it's a huge revolutionary step where it's something they're totally different there, you're going to get all that opposition to it.
Right.
Whereas if you take it, and I think, Mallory, you've been doing this, incrementally changing the mindset. I love how you described your business as being in the funeral business but not, and using technology. That's a different way than framing yourself reverse, and I think I see that very much the same way for us, which is making sure that we're business guided, not technology focused, meaning the technology is the basket by which we float on the boat, or we do our thing, think about that way, but it's not the end all. It's not the end all be all. The technology is just to assist us, to help us be better at what we do, create better employees, better working conditions, better situations for members, making it easier for folks to interact. That is the value of the technology.
Right. It's a means to the end, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny who said, when I say it's kind of a service, a funeral service business enabled by tech, when we first launched on our homepage, it said we were a funeral arranging platform. And I realized the word platform was freaking people out. Like, that didn't resonate. It wasn't the right language. And so we just say funeral, like it's a service. It's a service, and that's what we are, right? And so I think, communication is so important in how you frame things. I think building off of your point on keeping it simple, for me, it's always about implementation. And I think this is why tech businesses innovate so quickly. It's because it's not about a perfect product or building everything at once. It's about putting out kind of a minimum viable product and continuing to build off of that. And I think that's so important. It's just getting something out there and starting small and then building off of kind of what your grand vision is. I think that's tech businesses I always say, a tech business can build something within a few months that would take a traditional business years to build, right? And it's because they are constantly putting out updates and learning as they go. And then I think the other one is collaboration for me. It's not necessarily just about collaboration within your organization. I do think that's really important, but it's actually about collaboration between or within your industry, right? Is like learning from other businesses that exist. For me, it's been important to learn from other funeral homes and build relationships, learn kind of what people have done right, maybe what they could have done differently. I've never had the mindset of competition within my industry. I think that technology, our goal is to help consumers have choice. It's not about having the competition within our businesses. And so I've always been really keen to collaborate with others in the industry. I think that will make all of our businesses better. And so I think that's really key to innovation. Like, we will all succeed if we kind of keep up with the times and keep up with the needs of consumers. And so collaboration has always been really important to me.
So neat, so neat. Yeah, and it's the ability, you can't work in this bubble, and
Right.
innovation is moving so fast. You need to move, but at the same time, as you say, communication and listening on the other side, because you have to make those changes, especially in your industry, and Thomas, yours as well, where if something's not going the way or it's pushing away the other way, you're only delaying yourself. So you got to be able to listen and maneuver with it and be flexible. So amazing. Just lastly, folks, is, what new digital technologies do you guys see on the horizon that you think are going to help and offer the most potential for innovation that you're seeing? Thomas, we'll start with you.
So yeah, it's all about platforms. I think that's a very common way of doing it nowadays. In the past, we would have had a lot of disparate tools or systems that you had to glue together to get what you wanted as an outcome. Now it's about the platform. It's about being all in one, the place you can go do that type of work. And I think that's very disruptive. The reason I think it's disruptive, though, is that when we start moving on to platforms, the difference, I think, between a platform and traditional systems is, in a traditional system, you can customize it all you like. It's completely customizable. You can do whatever you want, make it and change it. In the platform world, the real innovation, I think, is that we're going to see is that you have to adapt processes to those platforms, right? And in areas traditionally that are harder to change inside of organizations. So, think of like finance departments or others that have like more rigid sort of things that go on. Those type of things, those are ones where disruption comes from moving to the platforms, because you have to update your way of doing business and all that. And if the businesses I've advised that are not for profit that do that, those areas are by far the hardest ones to adopt when it comes to a platform, because there's a lot of the nuances, and I want to keep my thing I'm doing special. The big key to it we sort of see is that the platforms become an equalizer, where at that special thing you were doing, well, it's really not all that special at the end of the day, especially for a back office function. It's more of maybe you have some unique things that you're doing there, but we can certainly we're more focusing on how we adjust your process to be more flexible and more just in time. So that's what I'm going to say is definitely around the platforms and that type of thing.
Okay, fantastic. Mallory?
Yeah, I've never, even though I work in the tech industry, I'm not that plugged into like the metaverse or, sending people to the moon. I think there's so much going on our planet and our world that we need to address some of those problems first. I think I've always been very passionate about medicine and science. And I think the pandemic has brought to light a lot of kind of the technologies that need to exist to not only help people access really quality medicine and healthcare, but also just tracking viruses and disease, and how can we build really interesting technology and innovations within that. So I've always been interested in healthcare. And the second one, actually, and this is totally random, but my co-founder recently sent me, Google created these glasses. They look like reading glasses, but they, as someone speaks to you in a different language, they translate for you. So you see the translation. Yeah. So I'm always interested in technologies that really help kind of unite people and bring people together. And there's so many interesting things happening. I would love to see a lot more in the end of life space. We have a increasingly aging population, and we need to create a better end of life experience. So I'm excited also to see anything technology wise. I'm in a group called Death Care North America, and there's different people creating really interesting technologies on that front as well.
Phenomenal. Mallory, Thomas, thank you so much. This was an excellent insights into innovation. A couple of things we heard today, folks, is, innovation accelerations is people driven. It's not technology driven per se. And that's the best way to look at it and move it forward. We have two industries here that are very conservative, very different, as you heard. And, they're governed by regulations, regulatory, there's rules. It can be complicated and scary. But the fact is, when you look at it and bring technology in, you can be innovative, you can still be disruptive, and at that time provide more choice for the consumers and do the right thing and still move this forward at the speed that that innovation's moving. So again, folks, thank you so much. I think it was a great conversation today, and I'll pass it back to you, Jim. Thanks.
Wow. Just wow. Thank you to the panel. Thanks to our moderator on that one. Here, I take away a lot from what we're watching here, but one of the things I took away from this was, if you're going to succeed in digital transformation, you have to be able to communicate complex information to a broad audience. Now, the C-suite executives who are making the decisions, the board of directors who are overseeing the corporations, to customers, and to those leading the change, and the employees who are implementing it. And as we saw yesterday in those great videos from CI Financial, just how important these informal structures of an organization are. And so we want to doubly look at not just those who are leading the change, but those who have to take and implement it. And in this next session, it sort of ties this together. Sydney Shone, she's an assistant professor, College of Information and Computer Sciences at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. And Cindy's going to offer some new insights into how we can turn data and analytics, a subject near and dear to me, into a compelling narrative that will help drive change. Cindy, take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Shone, Assistant Professor at Umass Amherst College of Information and Computer Sciences. And the key message I want you all to take home today is that you have a lot of power when you communicate data to other people. Well-designed data visualizations can lead to powerful and intuitive insights, but poorly chosen visualizations can leave important patterns obscured and misunderstood. Let's look at an example. So here we have a chart depicting the number of COVID-19 cases reported over 2 weeks in 5 counties in Georgia. Let's take a moment to look at this. The first thing you might notice is that there is a downward trend in cases. They're getting better. But after taking a closer look, you realize that is not the case. The x-axis values are sorted by size, not by time, so the downward trend is misleading. So the Department of Health in Georgia intended for this visualization to help you notice which day had the most number of cases and which day had the least number of cases. But it wasn't very effective because it's so intuitive for us to notice this downward trend. You could alternatively show the same data via a different design, sorting the data by county, and the x-axis is ordered by time. Now the pattern that stands out to you is how the number of cases change over time for these 5 counties. It's clear that there is a bimodal distribution of cases over time, but it's difficult to determine on which day there was the highest versus the lowest number of cases combined. So what we see here is that these two designs make you see very different patterns in the same data set. So it seems easy to critique the visualization and identify problems in hindsight. Designing a visualization is very complicated. And here's how it typically works. So first, researchers need to collect the data, and data scientists to analyze data and generate insights from data based on what the researchers collected. And then they design visualizations and interactions before the visualization can reach the end user, or we call the information consumer. And this process in reality looks more like this because designing a visualization involves a series of design decisions, and each design decision can afford different interpretations. So what I've spent the past 6 years researching on is the space of how design decisions map to viewer interpretations. Imagine this model where, given a design, we can predict how people will react to a visualization. And this space could look like this, or it could be like this. And this design space is quite enormous. Since we have limited time today, let's look at some examples. So here we have a visualization showing the durability of 3 components in 2 vehicles, A and B. What is the most intuitive comparison you might make here? Let's think about that for a couple of seconds. Feel free to mumble an answer to yourself. All right, so 80% of you are probably thinking, I want to compare vehicle A's component 2 and vehicle B's component 2. And I realize that vehicle A's component 2 is more durable than that of B, but the other components are less durable. Fair? All right, so let's look at this other visualization. Very similar stuff. The durability of 3 components in 2 vehicles A and B. What is the most intuitive comparison you might want to make here? Let's again think about it for a few seconds. Feel free to mumble it to yourself. So you're probably thinking, I want to compare the overall durability of A to the overall durability of B. And I want to come up with a takeaway that vehicle A and B are about equally durable. So although these 2 charts show the exact same data, the way I arranged the data visualization makes you do different comparisons, right? So this is just one example showing that the design choice can change what people compare in data. And in this case study, we see that people gravitate towards comparing things that are aligned, and when that doesn't work, they resort to forming visual groups and comparing these groups. So design choices can also be the type of chart you choose. So looking at this bar chart, it shows the revenue on the y-axis of 2 companies, A and B, and their 2 branches, East and West. When looking at this bar chart, the most intuitive thing people do is to compare magnitudes. You compare company A's revenue to that of B and see that A is higher overall. When I show you the same data using a pie chart, you begin to think about proportions. You notice that A West is the largest slice of pie. When looking at the same data now via a line chart, you think about trends and relative changes, noticing that the change in revenue from West to East is bigger in A than B. Scatter plots, on the other hand, are good at showing distributions and outliers. So here we have some y value and how it changes over time. And people looking at this chart are thinking there's something wrong with that outlier at time 8. And heat map makes people cluster values together and realize the higher values are on the left and the lower values on the right. And people like to focus on specific numbers and their ratio relations when it comes to tables. So you want to say something like the value at time 1 is 6 times compared to the one at the time 10. So we saw some examples of how design choices can change what people compare in your data. Design choices can also change people's gut reaction towards data. So first, a little bit of background. We have 2 systems that help us make decisions. One system, the rational system, relies on logical analysis to make decisions slowly. Another system, the gut system, relies on intuitions to make faster decisions. Let's see them in action. Looking at this chart showing the number of accidents drivers are involved in, what would you conclude? It's tempting to say, well, drivers who use the new safety GPS system get in fewer accidents than people who don't. It looks like the safety GPS system causes people to get in fewer accidents. And this is your gut system at work, coming to conclusions intuitively and assuming causal relations when none is depicted. Now, having thought about it a little bit more, you've probably realized by now that maybe there is a third variable at work. People who choose to use the safety system may drive more safely to begin with, right? Now, this is your rational system at work, but it's very slow. And this bar chart triggers this immediate gut reaction to draw causal conclusions. So what if we take the same data and visualizing it using a line chart? Looking at this, your knee-jerk reaction likely is people who use the safety system tend to get in fewer accidents. With this line chart visualization design, the gut reaction triggered is not a misguided causal conclusion, but a correlational one. We can compare it to the bar graph and see that visualization design can trigger different reactions when we reason with data. So last but not least, design choices can also change the decisions people make with data. So looking at this chart, which shows the student government election voting results for 2 parties, blue and green, over the past 3 years. The y-axis shows the percentage support they received. Now, who do you think will win in year 4? Maybe take a moment to make a decision. I'll wait a couple of seconds. You may think that blue is probably going to win because you saw that blue has won every year or that blue has won most recently. Alternatively, you may think that green wins because green seems to be gaining momentum and is slowly closing the gap between itself and blue. So what I did is I carefully designed this visualization to make either outcome seemingly likely. So there's no correct answer here. So when I surveyed hundreds of people online about this, it turns out that they are evenly split. Half of the people predict that the green will win, and the other half predict the blue will win. But when I convert the same information into a table, you can see that the number matches the height of the bars, so the table and the bar charts are informationally equivalent. Suddenly, everyone thinks that blue is going to win because the pattern of the green increasing over the past 3 years becomes less noticeable when they're presented as numbers in a table. So hopefully I've convinced you that designing a visualization is complicated. It involves a series of design decisions, and each design decision can afford a different interpretation. Design choices can change what people compare in your data, it can change people's gut reaction towards data, and it can change the decisions people make with data. And design choices can cover an enormous space, so the mapping actually looks more like this, with many opportunities for us to explore the most effective way to tell our story. So it's important for us to iterate on our designs until we reach the best one. So let's walk through some high-level design techniques for better data storytelling. So here's a design. What do you think I'm trying to say with it? You're not wrong if you're confused. This chart looks quite like a spaghetti. There's just too much going on. So what should we do to fix it? What about this? Looking at this, you might be thinking that people most likely get their news from TV and radio, and least likely from their friends. So what I did here is I decluttered the chart by taking away the excessive labels and grid lines so it looks more clean. And when looking at a clean chart, people focus on the extreme values, especially if they're up top. I can make my story stand out even more by doing this. Now, the key takeaway message that people are increasingly relying on the internet to get their news looks much more salient. So what I did is I highlighted the key trends. I focused the viewers using this highlight to make the main message stand out and becomes much more memorable. So how we arrived at these techniques, which we generally refer to as declutter and focus, is that we have showed thousands of real people visualizations and asked for their main takeaways based on what they say. And we extract generalizable rules to help us identify the mapping between visualization design and the takeaways. So what we're slowly building towards is a model that can help us design better visualizations by predicting what the viewer will take away upon looking at a visualization. So the designer can adjust the visualization to more clearly communicate some key messages. So let's look at one last example. So here is our first chart. Doesn't it feel overwhelming? It's hard to tell even what it's trying to say. But we can declutter it by removing the unmeaningful background and text colors. And now it's much easier to see that the chart is about the top 10 design concerns in car manufacturing. We can further focus by using annotations and highlighting. We focus the viewers and help them realize that most design concerns are noise related, such as those in tires and engines and those caused by wind. So hopefully I've convinced you that you have a lot of power when you communicate data to other people. Well-designed data visualizations can lead to powerful and intuitive insights, but poorly chosen visualizations can leave important patterns obscured and misunderstood. So design thoughtfully. That's all I have. Thank you all, and back to you, Jim.
Wow. As I was watching that last presentation, I kept seeing this show from this thing from a Star Trek episode where somebody introduced Data the android as Data, and he said, "My name is Data." He said, "Data, Data, what's the difference?" He said, "One is my name, the other is not." And I was thinking about the subtleties in what she was presenting and how that really made for the presentation of data and the conclusions you took from it. I hope you got as much from that as I did in there. But there's no denying, it's a lot to take in. But you can watch it again. It'll be here on the site in there, and share it with your friends. But let's take a breather right now and just have a little fun. And what better way to do that than one of ITWC's famous live quizzes? Participating is easy. If you haven't done one of these before, if you have, sing along. The question appears on the right-hand side of the screen or below the window where I am right now if you're on a mobile device. If you're in full screen mode, you don't see it, so take yourself out of full screen mode and play along. It'll be fun. And if you haven't already entered your name and accepted the terms on the chat box, you have to do that. So just do that now and you can participate in the quiz. Come on, here we go. Ready to get clicking? We're going to see the results live so you can compare your answers to your colleagues in the audience. It is not a hard quiz, trust me. But let's start. As we saw yesterday with the presentation of the 2022 Digital Transformation Awards, digital disruption is occurring across every industry. And you probably got that today as well too. So question one, isn't this a beautiful, Kraft Heinz, I didn't even know they were together. Kraft Heinz Company, what did they recently announce? A new type of designer dog that incorporates 57 different breeds. B, plant-based ketchup. C, a partnership with Microsoft to accelerate the consumer good giant's transformation and enable a more resilient supply chain. Or D, all of the above. The answer is C. I was hoping for D. But through the use of digital tools and real-time predictive analytics, Kraft Heinz, a food company, expects to reimagine its day-to-day operations, create a more collaborative supply chain, and enhance their customer experiences with improved inventory, transparency, and the ability to anticipate consumer and channel demand. Okay, and at least your hot dog toppings are being protected from supply chain issues. Veggie dogs for me, though. Question two. According to the 2021 Deloitte Global Shared Services Outsourcing Survey, the top digital technologies include robotic process automation, single instance ERP, globally standardized processes, or D, all of the above. They get harder. Pick one in there, right? Grab one, okay? And the answer is D, all of the above. Another interesting thing from that survey, it focused on the driver of digital transformation, but it says efficiency, reducing costs, and driving business opportunities were the top 3 reasons organizations were undertaking digital transformation journeys. So much about the business case for digital transformation. Question 3, you ready? A top mistake to avoid when digitally transforming an organization is A, redecorating the CIO's office. B, not making sure the company's ready, willing, and able. C, leaving IT in the basement. Hey, who put that there? D, protesting 5G. And the answer is, ready? Big drum roll. Yes, B, of course. Do businesses get their transformations right 100% of the time? No, not even close. There was a recent Everest Gartner survey that found that companies waste, now wait for this, waste roughly 70%, $900 billion of the 1.3 trillion, 70%, 900 billion of the $1.3 trillion they spend on transformation initiatives. Now that's mainly due to communication breakdowns. So, you think silos have no cost? Question 4. In addition to executive buy-in and financial commitment, a successful digital transformation requires A, constant communication with business units, B, plenty of snacks, C, a return to the physical office, or D, new talent. Okay, maybe you ruled out snacks, but which one's the right answer? Answer? Yeah, I wish it was C, but it's A. constant communication with the business units. And, well, I think any project goes better with snacks. You sure we can't change that? Never mind. In one study, transformation leaders consistently report, however, that they're underinvesting in talent, change management, and communications when they're reflecting on their digital transformation investment. 52% of the respondents believe they underinvested in talent, 34% believe they underinvested in change and communications initiatives. So, do you think this has any correlation with the fact that the surveys also indicated 900 billion of that 1.3 trillion was wasted? Just a thought. This is not the soft side of transformation programs. I hate that phrase, the soft side. Behavior change, confidence in the program, clarity of vision, all the things we've talked about for the last day and a half that could have reduced waste and given more return on investment, those are hard choices. Question 5. Sorry, I didn't mean to editorialize there. Question 5, we'll get back to the fun. It was no surprise that business continuity and resiliency was ranked as the most frequently cited business goals in Harvard Business Review's 3rd annual digital transformation survey. So the real surprise was that it superseded, which ones? Profitability, productivity and efficiency, better analysis of enterprise data to uncover new business insights, or D, all of the above. And by now you probably got it. D, all of the above. The uncertainty of the past 2 years has shown that the path to profitability and productivity starts with the basics of planning and resilience. And hopefully that's a message we've gotten across today. Last question. Ready? One more. Question 6. Which is not one of the essential pillars of modernization required for digital transformation? A, culture. B, business processes. C, casual Friday viewings of the IT crowd. And D, technology. Which is not one of them? Yeah, the answer is C, casual Fridays viewing of the IT crowd, not one of the essential pillars. But don't put your IT crowd in the basement, okay? And fair warning, here's another piece of great advice for you. Never type Google into Google. You'll thank me for this later. Search it out on YouTube if you want. Okay, that's the fun part. Well, I hope you had fun for the whole day, but just a little bit of nonsense fun there. I'll be back after you take in one of our other examples of another piece of fun. Useless devices that didn't save the world.
The Hush Me Mask. For those of you needing to make private phone calls in public places who don't mind looking like you've had dental work done on Saturn, comes the Hush Me Mask, which allows you to communicate on your phone without allowing Chester Nosy Pants there to listen in on your conversation. Built for the proudly paranoid among us, this makes a perfect gift for that double agent in your life who's just too darn lazy to leave the room to phone the Kremlin. Hush Me started out aspirationally on Kickstarter, which proves, once again, 40-year-old antisocial tech nerds who live with their parents evidently still have lots of money to burn. The unexpected upside to this is that just by putting this thing on, you buy yourself a lot of extra personal space, simply because those nearby tend not to feel too safe sitting that close to Hannibal Lecter while he's out on a day pass. So, whether this actually works or not, who really cares? You got your space. Mission accomplished.
Okay, I have to ask, am I the only one who thinks that mask thing might be a little too close to reality? I know the rest of these were insane, but this is what I'm thinking you might see. Okay. And the quiz and these things are just for fun, but there's a message in this, and that's that real decisions made while doing digital transformation are not easy or obvious, as some of our answers were. They're tough decisions made with high degrees of, or made in times of high degrees of uncertainty. But your strategy's the same. It works out. Eliminate the answers you know are wrong based on available information. Now, Franco Caracalla, President, CEO, and Chief Digital Officer of InnovaPost, knows all about that. We sat down recently for a talk about what IT leaders need to build into their digital plan to be successful. And if you were here yesterday, you know that InnovaPost was a winner of the 2022 Digital Transformation Award in the large private sector category. Check out the story on our platform for more details, but check it out after you watch the conversation I had with him. I'm here today with Franco Chiricella, the president and CEO of InnovaPost. Now, InnovaPost is a unique company, and not a lot of people may know about it, but it plays an important role in Canadian business. It has elements of both public and private sector, and it's felt the demands from the pandemic from the point of view of its customers and its employees, just like many of us, but in some other ways as well. Franco, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Jim.
Nice to meet you. Can you give me a little background on InnovaPost and describe it just for our audience?
Sure. InnovaPost is the IT shared services for the Canada Post group of companies that supports Canada Post, Purolator, and SCI Logistics. We predominantly support Canada Post, but provide IT services nonetheless for all three of the organizations. We were founded in 2002, believe it or not, already coming up on 20 years. Really back when, shared services model, particularly in the public sector, were quite common to sort of pool the IT demands of like member companies and try to deliver, efficient and more ideally, really effective IT for the entire group. And it's had and continues to have a great run, leading to Canada Post being a very large player in the e-commerce business, complemented by Purolator, who is as well, and SCI, who has carved out quite a strong business in the logistics space. And so we're very proud to be a critical part of those member companies. No more so than what we've observed the last couple of years through the pandemic.
Yeah. And now InnovaPost has been pursuing a transformation agenda for a few years now. In there prior to the pandemic and then the explosion in e-commerce that resulted from that. What was driving that initial change?
Despite all the positives I shared just in the previous question, one of the challenges a little bit is that we do operate as a separate subsidiary. And at times, that separation can cause a bit of a gap, a bit of a divide, right? And I think for a few too many years, InnovaPost focused more on technology than the outcomes of those technology decisions or work, right? We've started to use a saying now a little bit where we say, we should be just as excited about getting parcels delivered as we are about deploying new technology. And really what that means is when there was a bit of a more proximity from the business than we should have had, you tend to focus more inwardly and more on the technology and the business of running technology versus on how do we help our member companies achieve their goals, such as being an e-commerce leader. And so, that situation was a catalyst to saying, we need to be better aligned with the business, both in our objectives and our strategic goals, but also in how we operate, and from all the way from how we procure products to how we develop software, and essentially everything in between.
Yeah. So, what did the change entail? Well, how did you go about it?
Well, first and foremost, started with our entire leadership structure. And from there, every leader had their own transformational mandate, from, changing our HR structure, how we recruit, how we retain talent, our focus on training. But probably one of the core things was moving from a waterfall pool-based development shop to a true product-based agile one. That was basically the core that influenced everything else, and arguably one of the more disruptive and tough ones to do. But it's the one that we are seeing now as we emerge through it, where we truly have derived most of the benefit, or the benefit that was intended.
So let's talk about agile and what we mean by it. there are lots of definitions of agile. I'm sure how would you describe it? And how's that work? How's the work at InnovaPost been different as a result?
So I would define agile in really two different ways. The first one is being structured in a way that you can deliver features to market faster, fundamentally, full stop. That should be the goal of agile. And there's a whole methodology, all methodologies that you follow in how you work more closely with the business and how you break down requirements and you feed those to the product teams, you make those autonomous teams, and you set them up to deliver software faster. That's agility. That's the first definition. The other one is about architecting your landscape. You're essentially architecting solutions, not only for what the business is currently aspiring to do, but for things that they have not yet thought of. And that's really making sure that we're building architecture that's more modular, more, you hear the term Lego based, right? More modular, more platform types technologies. Now, granted, if it's in a completely different area, then that's one thing. But if it's on the peripheral of ideas that they're at, the best that you can do to anticipate gives you the ability to build off stuff that's already been built. And that also gives you a degree of agility.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say we moved from waterfall to agile, but this is a big shop. I mean, this is no small feat. How did you deal with that transformation?
So we were fortunate that we had, I would say, a bit of a incubation team for a few years before we started the transformation that had about 4 or 5 teams that were running agile. And they did quite well, but they were literally in the basement of a different building and doing that sort of skunk works type of stuff. And they really displayed the true value and the power of what agile can bring. And so with that as a proof point, we slowly rolled it out. And when I say slowly, it probably took us about 2 years to deploy it to all of our about 65 to 70 product teams. And so that's where we are in our journey now. We've deployed this agile methodology across all our product teams, and they're all implemented.
Yeah. Now you said deploying technology versus, having customer focused delivery solutions. And that's the hardest thing in the world to explain, I think, to an employee group. How do you describe it, and how has that changed things?
Well, in the first iteration of our journey, we defined product teams as we group people around like technologies that provided similar capabilities. So you could argue that first iteration was more about technology, right? You were on this product team because this product team was all Java, right? Or you were on this product team because all this product team focused on shipping tools. That brought us along that change curve and alignment with the business. Great. And I think that journey needed to happen. The next journey that we're getting to, which we see in the large organizations, right? You can't help but look at the Netflixes and the Amazons as an example, where they truly structure teams around products. And by products, I mean an individual product that then you can incent people on the team for the performance of that product, right? You always hear, we always hear, the stories about how there was a product team that was on Gmail, right? Just using a real example, right? And then those people are fundamentally incented, right? Their pay and bonus and so on and so forth is driven by the performance of that product, that capability. And that's where a little bit we aspire to be, because, certainly for Canada Post, we want to really focus on small and medium-sized businesses. And in saying that, unique capabilities and offerings are going to be key. And so we think that might be the catalyst that helps us get us to that, a mix that allows us to compete that much more, structuring like that, really truly going by product, so that everybody on that team, from the product owner to the developer to the tester to the scrum master, gets jazzed about the performance of the product, the Gmail in that case.
Yeah, great idea in there. So having gone through all that, in 2022, you've announced another set of change priorities, which are equally ambitious. What are these, and why do you need them now?
So in a few years ago, we created a playbook, which was a series of, well, there are 4 pillars of our playbook, and they're focused on people and stability and working with the business and value. The significance of this playbook was, for the first time, it allowed us to, rather than, and I don't know how many other companies are like this, maybe we were the only one, but we tend to do our annual planning cycle every year, and then that was our planning for the year. We didn't really think too many years out. And so this playbook activity was a fantastic activity in that we would say, okay, in stability, we are at 99.6% stability now. How do we get to 5 nines? And that's a multi-year journey. And so the playbook allowed us to think 3, 5, 7, 10 years out and say, okay, if we want to be 5 nines by year 7, what are the initiatives we need to put in place from now till then to get to 5 nines? So this was this playbook activity, which was, I would say, a game changer for us. It represented the basis of the transformation and allows us to be far more strategic and so on and so forth. Now, with that anchor document that lives for 5, 7, 10 years, every year you sort of pull out of that playbook to say, okay, what in 2022 now, referencing the playbook, what in 2022 do we need to focus on to support those objectives that we talked about that are some 3, 4, 5 years out? And we came up with 6 key objectives in 2022. And they're not anything radical. I would say they're all very much aligned to the times we're in, and they're aligned to our playbook. And so far, it's still relatively early in the year, but they seem to have really helped the organization dial in quite well. And I'm really pleased at the progress we've made already in the first quarter and some in 2022.
A lot of companies are also taking this opportunity or taking this challenge to really accelerate their move into the cloud. Has that been something you've been thinking through?
Yes, we started our cloud initiative in, I want to say, late 2020. We have a fairly large, expansive landscape, some 1,400 servers in our physical data center. And, we just needed to look at strategically, how do we do that? And so we pivoted a little and developed what we call a cloud smart approach. Which means ultimately we are aligned with the market. Ultimately, we see that the vast majority of our footprint will migrate to the cloud, but we'll move them in tranches that make sense, that add business value, right? And at a pace that doesn't add risk to the business, but also doesn't consume resources to a point where I can't do anything else. As you can imagine, just how I described that took a little bit of finessing to figure out the right strategy, but I'm quite pleased that we believe we've landed on that, and that's the one we're executing now.
That's great. So what have you learned, other than those parts, what have you learned from your journey so far that you'd share with your colleagues and say, if you're trying to transform your organization, here's something I learned from doing this?
Well, I think I've always known this, but maybe it didn't really resonate or was real for me until I was in this role, nothing gets done without the people. And you can hold as many town halls or meetings where you call edicts or you meet with your senior leaders and you lay down your expectations. Like, that is just not the way to get it done. At the end of the day, to get that groundswell, the organization has to believe in what they're doing, right? And then not only have to believe in it, but then you have to build excitement out of it. The beauty is, although as much trouble that is to achieve, once you have that, it's like anything. Why have 15, 20 people try to drive a transformation when you can have 750 people drive a transformation? And so if you have 15 or 20 people do it and they're struggling, It's not about the 15 or 20 people. It's the fact that they're trying to do it, and it's not going to work that way. And, I have to give credit to my predecessor, who was fantastic at building that excitement from the ground up. That's where magic happens, right? And it almost happens quicker than you thought after, because you have really enabled the organization to do it, not just a few leaders that, have it on their scorecard and they try to make it happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's as obvious to many companies in many ways. I think, or maybe we're all learning it in a new way. So what's our next big challenge?
I think what's next for us is, again, sadly, is a further transformation to truly be embedded, aligned with the organization, particularly Canada Post. If they want to be an e-commerce leader, what's our role in being an e-commerce leader, right? If they want to set the tone in Canada about ESG, what's our role in setting that tone and achieving those, fairly aggressive targets? And I think that's the next level of transformation, us really updating our playbook that really aligns to, we will support these Canada Post business objectives by achieving these particular goals and objectives on the IT side. I don't think we're too far away, but that is the next step.
Yeah. Well, I've learned one thing: the reward for successful transformation is more challenges, but it's great that way. Thank you so much for this chat. This has been great. And thank you for sharing what you've learned with our audience in there. I'm here today with Franco Kirikella, the president and CEO of Innova Post. Franco, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Franco. Now, with that kind of thinking, I believe people can see why Innova Post is an award-winning company. As we've seen through the past 2 days, AI and analytics have become a common part of many conversations. But there are few people I know who have looked at AI for business more carefully than our next speaker, Dr. Cindy Gordon, CEO of Sales Choice. Cindy is going to share with us her best advice on AI solutions to power growth while avoiding the ethical pitfalls and prejudices of the AI creators. Cindy, you have the floor.
Thank you for inviting me to speak on AI ethics and performance, applying AI for sustainable growth advantage. I'm Dr. Cindy Gordon. I'm the CEO of Sales Choice, and I'm the recipient of the 2018 Digital Transformation Award for Disruptive AI. First, anyone listening would recognize that AI is absolutely big business. The market's valued at over $93 billion, and it's projected to expand at a compound annual growth rate of over 38%. And depending on the report you read, sometimes you'll even see that the growth rate is between 48 and 56%. Forbes, where I actually am a thought leader, and I contribute a column on a weekly basis on AI and how it can be applied to improving board governance practices and giving CEOs insights on what they can do to take advantage of AI. The Forbes Insight survey that was done not too long ago looked at a number of respondents, and their feedback is that the value for AI can come in many dimensions, but these are sort of the top 4 sort of parameters that often come up in the research surveys. First, 40% opportunities in increasing productivity, 30% roughly in reducing operating costs, improving the speed to market by over 20%, and I think most significantly, an opportunity to relook at your business model and look at it, exploring how you can possibly change it or transform it into a new business model. Obviously, the topic of this that you've asked me to speak about is to look at not just what AI is, tell a few case studies, but look at more deeply the AI ethics lens. I'm an adjunct professor at George Brown College and also an AI ethics board advisor at the University of Arizona as part of the Forbes Business and Technology School. So I've been immersed in looking at AI and ethics for quite some time. First, I think it's important to define AI ethics. It's a system of moral principles and techniques that are intended to inform the development and the responsible use of AI. More recently, the Pew Research Institute examined some of the key perspectives of where people are in regards to employing ethical principles. they found that over nearly 70% chose the option that ethical principles will not be employed in most AI systems by 2030. I found that statistic very disturbing. In other words, many people are building models using AI, but not thinking through the moral implications or the societal implications. So we do have some work to do as a technology leadership community. If you net out all of the sort of worries and hopes, it kind of comes in a couple of streams. First, the main developers of AI are very focused on profit-seeking ventures, and there right now is no legal global consensus about what ethical AI might look like. So there's a lot of work to do on the legal front. In terms of the hope side, obviously AI shows incredible promising value in terms of societies and ways that can mitigate our problems arising from technological evolution. When you look at the area of AI ethics, there's usually the big four that stand out in terms of the ones you really need to think through. Obviously, in the time that I have with you today, I can't cover them all in detail, but I am going to talk about particularly data bias in terms of ensuring inclusion and diversity. And I'm also going to talk about privacy in relationship to trust and transparency, and particularly bring in the point of view of surveillance capitalism. We spent 3 years, my partner, Mallory Greene, and I, doing global research. And as you can see, there's 3 books that have been published. The AI Dilemma is one that we co-authored. The other 2 were the work of Mallory Greene and all of his efforts in pioneering in AI. Through the journey, we learned that there isn't one industry that cannot be possibly disrupted through AI. So it's not a singular solution. It's a technology that can apply to pretty well any profit center or not-for-profit center. Some of the kinds of things that you see every day, obviously, if you've got a Google Nest or you've got other products in your home, you can speak to those products and those products can answer your questions, can handle our customer call inquiries, diagnosing all kinds of medical issues or challenges, even predicting credit card risk well before the risks happen. Driverless cars are obviously going mainstream. We will continue to see that kind of innovation. Lots of focus even on playing music, inventing music, painting, rewriting our email communication. So here, are just some of the examples of where AI is applied everywhere. I want to take the opportunity to share a little bit of our story and what we've learned in terms of applying sustainable AI, particularly in the sales industry. So first point is we only work, my company, in B2B large enterprises. 30% of those B2B companies will be employing AI to augment at least one of their primary sales processes by 2025. Just like we saw in advancing AI into marketing enablement, we're seeing the same thing now in sales. We've been on a journey pioneering. We've got a platform that is a very robust AI insight engine that not only looks at identifying the leads and prioritizing them for you, prioritizing your opportunities, getting to levels of 90% in terms of predictive accuracy on your forecast, but also moving upstream to relationship intelligence. And our newest edition is actually looking at correlations of mood into driving a business advantage. We all know happy, motivated employees drive higher results in sales. Just a quick snapshot of some of what our clients are saying. You can see here Jeff Green from Purolator, where they're using our software across all of the sales practices for small, mid, and large enterprises, and how they have benefited as a result of our forecasting. RL Datix, a very significant company in Ottawa, now has a global footprint. They use us every single day, and if they don't feel that they're getting the right input, they're relying on the AI to actually revalidate whether they will include an opportunity in a forecast or not. And we're getting to levels in these accounts in some areas of 85 to 95% accuracy on different sales cycles. We've won a lot of awards, and I think a lot of the awards are a result of our position on ethical AI, and particularly transparent AI. I'm underscoring this point because there's a lot of solutions in the market that are black box AI, where you get a prediction, you get a perspective, and then humans act on it. But do you really understand what the underpinnings are? Do you really understand the data and maybe the methods that are applied, and also the data sets that are being used? So our position is that we are 100% transparent in our methods. We even have an audit trail. We're not believers in black box AI, and we really caution technology leaders to really understand the implications of not having a line of sight to really strong, responsible AI practices. We step back a little bit and we look at companies perhaps like Google, right? And we're absolutely big users of Google technology at my company. But let's step back a little bit and think, Google knows where we are. They know the context of our activities, who we're with. Maybe 5 years from now, the technology will not only know everything that I've just said, but also our health, even predict when we'll likely die if it's by natural causes, and also down the line. Will AI help by warning us of a cancer likelihood so we can get some help? Or will an employer have that predictive insight across their employee base and be able to make some changes before the risks become an operational expense? So imagine that you've got a health index across all your employees and all their medical issues and predict the odds of when their situations will move to another decision making. And so will we enable AI for good, or will AI in business start to be used for bad behaviors? There's no one that's been more vocal on some of these topics on AI data bias than Dr. Cathy O'Neil in her Weapons of Mass Destruction, and also the recent book that was written on Invisible Women by Carolyn Chirado Perez. The fundamental assumption here is really threefold. First point, there's actual bias in the mathematical algorithms. Second point, about 80% of the data sets that are being used for predictive modeling, particularly in image processing for facial recognition, are mathematically flawed. As a matter of fact, we can't tell the difference often between a black person versus a white person is very easily identified, and having false positives are very, very low when it comes to identifying white males, but very high in terms of recognizing females. Let's move to surveillance capitalism. I don't think there's a day that goes by when I'm not monitoring something that's going on in China, and I have been following their developments and their incredible growth over the last 10 years when they indicated that AI would underlie, essentially it's like the water system, every single business, every single process. And they have declared that they will be the leader worldwide in cyber sovereignty. However, what are the implications here when you start moving into solution sets like SenseTime? SenseTime went public. They're one of the top fifth largest IPO that went public about 4 years ago. They're valued at over 20 billion at this point in time. And what do? Well, essentially, you can see on this slide, they have a panoramic camera. It's got 8 different lenses, and they're positioned all over the airports, all over the subways, all over the main residential areas, main shopping areas, also integrated into Honda vehicles. So essentially, the data is being amassed on every single person, maybe where you walk, where you eat, what you do. Think about amassing everything. It was almost like watching the movie Minority Report, where everything comes together. And it's all driven from facial technologies and image recognition, and also correlating other data sets that they have on you. Do we have permission to collect all that data? The individual is not part of the conversation, or the implications and risks and how that data is being used. There's another development that's becoming more significant and very real, maybe not as much in North America, but definitely within Asia. We have a rise of synthetic robots and non-human relationships and deeper ethical considerations to think about. Samsung, although they're from South Korea, they recently announced, I think it was about 5 years ago, Neon. It's amazing how many people in North America aren't aware of Neon and what Neon is going to do. Essentially, these are digital avatars, artificially human avatars. I can create a visual avatar that almost sounds like me, has my freckles, even position, but moves like I do, etc. So we're moving into a world, and obviously when you look at the metaverse, where we will have avatars that look like humans in the actual virtual spaces. But that's not the only dynamic here that's happening. The other one is actually physical robots that are being synthetically developed who will also stand beside us, work beside us, etc. What are the ethical implications there in terms of the loss of jobs or the world that we want to create or even the world we want to interact with? We now have a rise of men even marrying robots. As a matter of fact, when I did my research preparing for this, there were over 100,000 applications in China currently for people looking for legal sanction to marry their robots. Now, obviously, these commercial licenses aren't necessarily fully ratified by government legislators, but over the next 20 years, this will become more commonplace. And so just like we've had to fight for different rights, do anticipate that this is an area that's on the rise. Now, what's driving this? Well, what's driving this behavior is also because of the increased factors of human loneliness. It's actually at an all-time high. It's actually increased by over 30% over the last 10 years. Now let's take another perspective. Let's just step back and look at the US Army new drone swarms. This isn't fiction, this is reality. These are visualizations of products that are being tested. Now, extrapolate this a little bit further and know that most of the technology in these drones can actually be commercially and easily purchased. So as homeowners, we could actually build these ourselves. Well, what are the implications of students getting together that are angry, creating mass opportunities of drones, and having them swarm into the public school systems, all remotely working from their home computers or another location? So we are going into a period where drone technology is going to actually we'll start to see terrorist attacks. They haven't come yet with drone technology, but rest assured they are on the horizon. So you might be wondering why I'm raising some of these ethical questions. That's because leaders need to get out front. They need to look beyond the 12 months or, the next 12 months, or the next, 24 months. They have to start looking strategically about the world that we're all co-creating together, and also thinking hard about the world that we want to leave for our children. Now, to turn the tables, because my objective was not to rain down on this wonderful conference that you're all having, I wanted just you to be strategically aware of some of the dimensions as technology leaders that you do need to have be on the lookout for. But there's a lot of positive things that are happening now. First, there's the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI. They released a recent AI index report. The IEEE, which has always been governing and providing good standards to help guide our corporations, they have set their focus on releasing AI standards and even AI certifications in terms of ethical and responsible practices. The education is critical. The U.S. National Security Commission on AI has basically done a tremendous job of identifying malign uses of AI and even banning significant players like SenseTime that I mentioned in terms of facial recognition not to be allowed into North America. Canada has been always very progressive on the AI stage. We have over 13 AI policy initiatives. I encourage you to learn and read about what Canada is doing in this area, because obviously that's at least my home country. In terms of where the leadership is on the legal side, I would point you to the European Commission proposal for regulation, which have been laying down harmonized rules, and it's a major step forward. And those particular practices, once legalized, will cascade over to the North American legal context, because we are looking for unifying legal standards across the globe. It's taking time, but the good news is that they are coming. Now, one of those principles is a very significant ethical principle, and that is, I as a human have the right to be unknown. And you have to have my permission to do anything. And I have the right to basically remove any footprint of me at any point in time. So how we implement those protection, privacy rules is a whole other perspective. But I just want to highlight that those are some of the ideas that are being discussed at this point in time. When you step back and you want to think about building a sustainable AI strategy, I think the very first premise is you need digital literacy. If I took the board of directors of your company or all your leadership team and I gave you a white sheet of paper and I asked you to define AI, and then I asked you to define machine learning, then I asked you to define an algorithm, I might get different answers. It's very important that we upgrade the skills and knowledge of our leaders across our organizations because I'd mentioned at the beginning, AI is underlying everything. It's much like we had to learn in terms of the applications of personal computers and how to work through how to use PowerPoint, how to use Excel. We now need to understand the language of artificial intelligence. We don't have to necessarily be the programmer, but we certainly need to manage the life cycle and understand how important it is. The second imperative is to build ethical AI foundations into your operational practices. I had the pleasure of interviewing 2 senior VPs from Bank of Nova Scotia yesterday, and we talked a lot about how their life cycle model has brought in ethical foundations right from the get-go. So they have a very comprehensive ethical list to determine whether or not you will even be able to go to step 2. So think of ethical foundations as your screen. Is AI going to be used for good or for harm? And does it meet all of our ethical criteria? Have that risk assessment, do it up front. But at the same time, you've got to follow that the development practices continue as teams evolve and resources evolve as you move through the life cycle of building an application. The other thing is I think a lot of good consolidation of integrating functions for data analytics, AI, and risk into a unified operating model. I can't underscore the importance to bring these groups, operating groups together and not to have silos. And same thing with the creative visual designers. Bringing those into the equation is so important. In some banks that I've spoken to recently, 80% of their AI models never make it into sustainability and production. The fourth area is to ensure that we're developing our talent. There is nothing more difficult these days to attract really accomplished data scientists. So you need to attract them, develop, retain them. They need to have the fundamental toolkits so that they're growing and exploring. And most importantly, the AI projects that you're advancing really need to be demonstrating that they're for good, and you're calibrating the value right up front, and then following that journey through the life cycle. So these are sort of 5 fundamental principles that we look to in terms of companies building sustainable AI strategies. In terms of ways that we help our clients get AI right, I think you've already noted that we've built an AI award-winning software as a service platform for sales professionals. But we've also moved beyond just sales professionals in the sense that we're now helping our clients build robust business strategies. We're guiding AI and ML foundations. We have a very rich set of educational materials to train C-levels. Probably trained over 500 senior executives on AI since we started our company. And now we're really expanding and building robust AI ethical models to really help ensure that our clients build value. We've learned so much in our journey, and a lot of this has also been possible from the leadership and support of Fawn Annan, the CEO of IT World Canada, and her continued stewardship to profile entrepreneurs who are working very, very hard in advancing the field of ethical AI. So I really want to say thank you, Fawn. In closing, AI ethics and performance, if you have to really wrap it up in a nutshell, I think you have to strive for balance. Leadership in AI is all about achieving the optimal balance and ensuring you are integrating deeply responsible AI for good throughout your continued AI journey. It needs to be top of mind. You need to build it into your cultural DNA. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. If you'd like to learn more about our company, I just will indicate that we have a lot of rich material on AI in our YouTube channel, in our video channels. So we're always sharing our knowledge to help you grow. I encourage you to follow my Forbes AI channel because it is designed for senior leaders. And I think there's content in there that can help you as well as educate your employees and your talent. So thank you very much for having me with you today. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your conference on disruptive innovation and digital transformation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cindy. Now, we've got one final panel before going to the live stream part of our show, direct from the Verity Club in downtown Toronto, and the presentation of the annual ITWC CIO of the Year Awards. And it is a remarkable panel. Now, we pulled together a great group of panelists to offer advice on how your organization should be preparing for the future. In our initial digital transformation conference several years ago, we had a discussion on how mainstream businesses need to prepare for AI as a stretch goal. And now, AI is a pretty common tool in most organizations. So, today, as our panel offers a discussion about how you should be preparing for crypto and the metaverse, I'm making a mental note to check back in 5 years to see if there's been the same level of advancement in these issues. And I'm betting there will be. I can think of no one better to take us through the discussion than blockchain evangelist Kalea Carrington. And she'll introduce herself in a minute, but she's joined by Rick Halbrecht, Global Lead Smart Cities at Stantec, and Jonathan Anderson, VP of Digital Transformation at Aviso Wealth. Take it away, Kalea.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this last panel today. My name is Kalea Carrington. I'm the Executive Director for the Canadian Blockchain Consortium, and I'm really excited to be hosting this last and final panel of the day. And our topic is going to be from diverse to metaverse, from NFT to cryptocurrency, and we're going to be taking more of a futurist spin on technology and how it's going to lead into the future. So I'm going to ask some really key questions for everyone in business that I think people should just naturally ask themselves. And in the world of technology, it's pretty much ever changing, and it's really imperative for businesses to be very fluidic as well as future thinking to be able to maintain that more competitive edge for their businesses long term. There are many things that inhibit a business's growth, and that's not just from the revenue perspective. And I think it's really important to have these initial kind of questions framed around more of our belief systems in business. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this panel today. And I'm going to kick this one off, and we're going to discuss the various forms of bias, such as a confirmation bias, a sunk cost bias, a cognitive bias. And these various biases were actually major contributors to businesses like Blockbuster failing and giving way to organizations like Netflix that came out. And it was the confirmation bias that was one of their most disastrous, because the business was getting this level of validation from people that were consistently coming in. They went and on Thursdays would look for whatever new movie was coming out, get their movie, get their, their popcorn, their Twizzlers, whatever, go home, end up paying late fees. But they really believed that model that people would want to come into the store, purchase, or rent these videos, be willing to pay these late fees, was something that was going to maintain their business long term. And that level of bias actually led the way for newer technologies like streaming and Netflix to come in, not realizing that people would actually prefer to be able to stay home and do these kind of things. So can you guys give me some of the examples of how you think different forms of biases could be even impacting your own current business, and what you could do to potentially overcome this to make sure that you don't become the next Blockbuster?
I think the points you just make are bang on. I think we've seen this from the invention of the car, when they said, you either have a car, why do you need a car? Why don't we have faster horses? I think in all kind of true disruptive transformation, we tend to hold on to what we know and what we're comfortable with. And breaking out of that is scary and risky, and you don't know necessarily how your consumer or your customer may respond to it. I do think we see this in cities too. Of course, citizens in any community range from those that are not very digital literate and not quite participatory in the digital economy to those that are 100%, digital nomads and online, and they want more and more and consume more, and they're open to all these new innovations. And our municipalities across the world are trying to figure out how to embrace new technology to deliver services and experiences that are consistent for all those different stakeholders. And so what happens is we end up going for the lowest common denominator, because that's the least risky and the safest bet in terms of embracing and accepting technology, but probably not really best served for, I think, what lies ahead of us. The example that you give, we all sometimes, make fun of the Blockbuster story, the Kodak story, the companies that don't exist anymore because they did not see the future. I would argue by now we've seen enough examples where this happens. So who are we to dismiss some of these new technologies that are coming when we've laughed about these innovations, but that are now completely consumed us. So I think from how we consume municipal services to how we do parking on the street, how we need to prepare our roads for self-driving cars, I think the conversations go wide and broad when we think about the cities of tomorrow.
Yeah, and for us, our challenge is more around, I think there's a lack of understanding in our industry around cryptocurrency and new technologies, the metaverse, how it would disrupt the wealth management space in general. And then sunk cost. There's already so much that we need to do to remain competitive, and for us to think about innovative ways and try to get ahead and be proactive, to either bring in cryptocurrency or imagine what wealth management might be in the metaverse. It's just a little overwhelming. So for us, it's more about recognizing that those opportunities exist and giving a space for our executives to have discussions around, what would the metaverse mean for our business? What would the metaverse mean for our clients or partners? Cryptocurrency, again, kind of a scary place for people to go that are really working on the traditional kind of wealth management space, and then expensive too. If you already have technology and your business is set up around traditional asset management, wealth management, to incorporate crypto into that, there are a lot of barriers that you have to overcome, a lot of things that you have to do. And sometimes it's easier for people that are startups or, people that are already in the space to compete because they've built it based off of just offering the cryptocurrency versus the more traditional products that you might see. So again, what we're doing is we're recognizing that we do have those biases, trying to figure out how we can educate ourselves on what that means in terms of our our company, and then look at ways of slowly but iteratively trying to chip away at some of those problems. The financial services are really provided by people. And so you build out products and technology that support the advisors, the wealth advisors, and your sunk cost almost becomes those advisors. And then how do you bring those people along with the journey and kind of reimagine new ways of actually being able to provide wealth management without jeopardizing their career, basically.
We see the same in cities, of course, where we have for years, decades, sometimes hundreds of years, made big investments in how we run our cities and to transform those in a disruptive way, right? They're dealing with massive sunk costs. And I think a big challenge we have in any organization, municipalities for sure, is kind of shifting that from, yes, sunk cost till now, but then the opportunity cost going forward. And that is a very scary proposition in terms of what does this all mean? And also the not knowing, and I think, Jonathan, you made the point about not understanding it enough to not necessarily knowing that if we make a move and go in a certain direction, what's the cost that's coming our way, particularly with technology. And we hear this all the time. If I buy this now, redo this now, do I have to rebuild this and replace this every year because the speed of technology is so fast? So I think there's a huge uphill battle in having people to shift from first kind of a financial ROI. If I invest X, then my return is Y. How do we turn this into sustainable ROI and think about people's well-being and social value and environmental value, and finance being one of them? And then potentially through partnerships or having these kind of new companies that stemmed from the digital economy partner and collaborate in different ways, and so create almost collaborative ecosystems to tackle the challenges.
On top of discussing, like, okay, so now we have like our preconceived like notions or belief system and different forms of biases, but then also corporate culture is a huge thing to consider when looking at adopting new and transformative technology. So I like to talk about like what is the corporate culture within the workplace? What is the culture around risk? Because there's some businesses where it's like, if someone wants to go, oh, this is really crazy, this is amazing, I think that we should look at this, this is how I see it disrupting. It's like, if the corporate culture around risk or being able to bring these new and emerging ideas it doesn't create like safety. If someone feels like, oh, well, if I bring this up or if I try this new thing, I could get fired, I'm going against the status quo of the business. what can businesses do to encourage their staff to feel safe around, proposing these risks or taking these risks and proposing something new within the business that could be transformative?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a great problem to have too, because I think most organizations are not set up to invite innovation and trigger it. So I think it has to be part at the core to how we deal with compensation, how we manage performance, because we can say we encourage it, but to your point, if it then it's a wasted idea and then behind the scene chatter about it, people will turn down and then or shut down and not innovate anymore. So to make this part of a culture is, I think, a very difficult shift. And I'd love to hear what Jonathan is doing in this world too.
Yeah, we try to promote a culture where everybody feels safe to raise, problems or to come up with new ideas to solutions. I think the issue for us and for a lot of organizations, and I think about the adoption curve. Like there are early adopters who are really gung-ho to go on to technology because that's where their core beliefs are. They believe that, technology is always going to make things better. Or you might have late adopters to that technology, that adoption curve. It really depends on your comfort and what what environment you're in. For us, I don't think there's a need for us to be an early adopter or kind of an innovator in the space. We just need to be able to keep up with what's happening with the fintechs or organizations that are coming in to disrupt the model. Our view is we need to be able to keep up with them because change is expensive. We don't know if all the latest trends are actually going to take off and actually turn a profit. We want to be a little bit balanced in our approach.
I find that does make sense, but it's also, anyway, that could in itself be a debate, because I think maybe for large financial institution, a city, keeping up is good enough. But I bet you there's organizations out there that keeping up won't, maybe on the path of destruction and not survival. And so I guess it depends a little bit on what sector you're in and maybe the size that you are. Even there, I would be cautious because I think there's large, particularly in the retail business, companies thinking to have kept up, but that don't exist anymore.
So I guess this leads into my next question, or about this. It is all around transformation. And this one is, we're continuously, technology is always changing this landscape for businesses. One of my favorite examples actually is Tesla. So the way that they've come up with autonomous vehicles, if you would think about it 5 years ago, who would have thought that they would have wanted to drive into a vehicle or drive in a vehicle where the robot is guiding it? You'd have thought, oh no, I'm not putting my life in the hands of this particular robot. But it's now gotten to the point where they're developing out stage 3 of autonomous level vehicles, which means no human interface is required. Right now, Tesla's self-driving car, you need moderate human intervention, but eventually it'll get to the point of no human intervention. Think of the movie like I, Robot. And they're even looking now at being able to do fractional ownership of their vehicles. So most people are in their cars maybe 5% per day, gets them to their office, gets them home. If you think about how IoT, machine learning, even blockchain technology is transforming the automotive industry, think about the businesses that could be disrupted. So think about the parking lots today are your Blockbuster, and autonomous vehicles of tomorrow are your new Netflix. So if you can purchase a self-driving vehicle for $40,000, like Tesla's trying to do, and Tesla will underwrite it as well, so insurance brokers won't even be needed for this. Your vehicle could now take you to work and drive itself around making money like an autonomous Uber all day. What's that going to mean if your revenues are based in parking lots? What's that mean if a city, if your revenues are based on, the parking fees? What's that going to mean if you're a taxi driver or an Uber driver and you're no longer going to be needed for this because, ownership of a vehicle, or if you can do fractional ownership of these vehicles, car dealerships, how are those potentially going to be disrupted? So looking at technology today and how they're trying to adapt it for the future is very critical, because it's going to let you know where your business could be completely displaced. So to get back to it, I guess my question would be how do you see technologies like the blockchain, IoT, and machine learning displacing businesses in the future? What advice would you give to companies to try and stay relevant when all this disruption is coming and it's really not far away? The adoption curve is no longer 25, 50 years. It's like 10.
I think the advice is that disruption is inevitable. You will be disrupted by these new technologies. So pretending it won't impact you or ignoring it, which I think still a lot of businesses do because they're either comfortable or it comes back to the biases conversation. They want to protect their assets or their legacy infrastructure. But to somewhere in the organization create this sandbox or this lab where you are actively pursuing and exploring and understanding, and maybe that's where it all starts, what all these technologies even are. You spoke earlier about cryptocurrency and blockchain, and to be very frank, I know I find it still sometimes mind-boggling what it all is. And then you see some celebrity to speak up on Twitter about it, and then suddenly prices go up or down. And I suspect that 90% of the people out there don't really know yet what this really means. So educate yourself, learn what these technologies are. Don't laugh when a small startup comes with a solution that seems disruptive, because then it likely is disruptive. And at the leadership level, create an appetite for trying to maybe willingness to cannibalize your own business, or you're going to stay behind.
Yeah, for us, it's really around carving out time so that people can get a better understanding of those technologies and how they may disrupt their line of our business, right? So we have created a space where we have someone that's the head of innovation. So it would be one person, like as an example, we could go out and we could hire someone that proposes to be, an innovation expert. And that would be fine. But the approach that we've taken is we really want to get someone, or we have someone who really knows our business really, really well, and then is very interested in the technology disruption space, and then can kind of play through scenarios with themselves to figure out, if that disruptive technology would have an impact on our current business, and then present that back to our executive.
May I be briefly controversial now and maybe counter Jonathan's point? Because maybe actually the solution is to hire an innovation person, not from your industry, and who understands your industry the best. Because competition may come from all different angles. It may be a whole different type of company, the type of business that comes that is not restricted or limited by how you've done things in the past, and take a perspective of a different industry into the mix that really shake things up. And maybe it's not one or the other, but at least create a forum with diverse voices and diverse perspectives that really challenges the status quo rather than maybe keeping it grounded in established practices or concepts.
I think it's so valuable to have diverse perspectives. So as opposed to hiring an individual that again could come with their own preconceived notions and confirmation bias and all these different biases that could come in, like having time within the organization to bring in like a speaker series, different individuals that can come in that are futurist focused, might not be in the financial space sector, might not be in the smart city sector, but a futurist, someone who pays attention to technological trends. My last kind of question in this conversation around these transformative technologies like NFTs and crypto and metaverse, do you guys think that if a business does not have a digital place within this metaverse, that they're going to be able to stay relevant if they're looking in the cryptocurrency sphere?
Depends on how long they want to be around for. Like, I think it's going to take some time for metaverse to actually catch on. I mean, it is catching on right now, but really to be adopted by everybody. So I think there'll be lots of opportunity, lots of time for that to be accepted by the general masses. But if they want to stay around, I'm not going to say a year because I'll be proven wrong. I'll say 10 years, 15 years from now, then yes, they probably want to think about how they want to be positioned. I think in the metaverse right now, you'll see it's a lot about marketing and having a brand awareness in that space. I don't know if that's really necessary, at least for my business right now.
Well, you never know. It could be.
Never know. Yeah, for sure. That's what I guess that's exactly.
From a city's perspective, I think it's quite a leap from where cities are today with delivering services to suddenly be in the metaverse. But as we said earlier, I believe it's going to be inevitable. And I think every business probably stands to benefit from at least hopping on the train and understanding what's going on. And they don't have to drive the train, but to be on the train and sniffing this out and being part of this journey.
Any final thoughts on the conversation that we've had today? I've really enjoyed having this chat with you guys.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. I think all the topics we touched are so critical. I think for the success and the frankly survival of all businesses and companies. And I think the call out to be open-minded, to embrace it, to don't dismiss it. We need leaders, we need followers, but I think laggers are gonna be hurting.
Yeah, I echo your words. It's been a great time having this conversation. Give me some things to think about as well. It's still hard for me to wrap my head around everything that we talked about, and I think just having a balanced approach, making sure that you don't fall back behind, be a laggard. I would agree. The technology is moving at such a pace now that you have to keep informed of it, at least some things that are happening within that world, so that you can, have a balanced view and a balanced approach, and highlight things that may provide an opportunity. But I had a great time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Back to you, Jim.
So one of the great things about virtual conferences is you can do them from anywhere, and our team is stretched to prove that. I got to get to the Verity, so I'm not driving. That's the part you should know in there. But I do want to say thanks to Clay and the panel, and it's clear we're going to continue to hear more about the metaverse as major players continue to jump into this concept. So it's great to have a forum like this to discuss it. And audience, if you've got some thoughts about the metaverse, I'd love to see them in the chat, unless you're driving. Now, it seems like it's been a long time since we've had a live event, and I know I've grown to love virtual events, seriously. But there is something about the casual conversation at a live event that I think everybody misses. How many ideas have become a reality that started with an unexpected conversation at a live event? You'd be surprised. At ITWC, we're back on a path, or on the road to live events, as you'll see shortly. But let me assure you, there will always be a virtual component to our live shows. And after serving up the best advice from the top leaders to the entire country for more than 2 years now, we can't go back to an exclusive live event that limits the sharing of knowledge to the people within a couple of hours' drive of Toronto. Well, even if you have a driver. It just doesn't make sense. So even if you'll never attend another ITWC event live, I guarantee you will always have a place at the table. Now, we're not sure what that's going to look like necessarily. Now, in the same way our virtual events have evolved, so will our hybrid events. And I encourage you to share any ideas you may have to make them better. Now, traffic permitting, we should be there in a minute when Philippe Johnston, president of the CIO Association of Canada, steps to the podium at the Verity Club. Step on it, will you?
President of the CIO Association of Canada. I'm also the CIO for the National Research Council. First off, I just want to say how great it is to see everybody here, new faces and old faces in person. And everybody, it's amazing how much everybody is beaming. Looking up here at the screen, it's very nice to see. Could I just see a show of hands? How many people, it's their first time an in-person event? Okay, look at that. What a large number of people who are doing this for the first time. We had an event at CIO Can in Montreal. Gary was there with us about a month ago, and we really loved it. So really, two things to share before we get started with this first in-person event for most of you. I attended, like I said, an event about a month ago in Montreal with Gary. And what I thought was really interesting is my brain wasn't ready for in-person events and networking and talking and looking at people in the face and looking at their expressions and finding out, what are they really saying? Because with MS Teams or Zoom, it was like checklist, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going. So that was kind of interesting. The second one, and I don't know how many of you were in this boat, but I guess since COVID has started, I had to stop going to hair appointments. And as you can see, I still have hair that's short. I don't know how many of you developed their own way or approach to getting their haircuts, especially for men.
I don't have that problem.
Yes. So COVID was a game equalizer for you. But we started up Chez Renee at my house, and that was my spouse. And really, it's just, I'm her only customer. And she's been doing a wonderful job for the last 2 years, so I just thought I would mention that we have decided that Chez Renee will stay open forever. So anyhow, that was another piece about the COVID piece. For those of you, though, who don't know us, the CIO CAN is our not-for-profit organization with a mission to facilitate networking, sharing of best practices, and executive development, and to collaborate on issues facing CIOs and senior business IT leaders and executives. We have 7 chapters across Canada with close to 500 members. We produce more than 65 events annually, and we're also growing and looking for opportunities. If you know friends, CIOs in Saskatchewan or the Maritimes, we're also looking to grow in those areas. For those of you who don't know us, whoops, I went up instead of down. We're proud to continue our long association with IT World Canada to help recognize the country's top technology leaders and to shine a light on their wonderful accomplishments. After 2 years, where we had to present these awards virtually, I'm so pleased that we are standing here today with all of you and to be able to congratulate the many winners and to present these awards in person. For those of you who are watching live on the stream, this is the day 2 part of the event of the 2022 Digital Transformation Awards, and I really look forward to seeing you in person really soon. The phrase digital transformation often evokes a lot of skepticism, in spite of the fact that it has been in common parlance for over 10 years. And I think many of us as CIOs have been talking about this for at least 10 years. Digital transformation strategies can be interpreted as vague and are easily misunderstood. So I wasn't surprised when I saw a Harvard Business Review Analytics Services report that showed that 26% of the IT leaders indicated that one of their biggest organizational challenges is the lack of a clearly defined digital transformation strategy. Yet in the same survey, an astounding 95% reported increased importance of having a digital transformation strategy within their industry. How do these figures match up? The global pandemic has underscored the imperative to use technology as a lever to change how organizations achieve their goals. The pandemic has put everyone's digital transformation journeys to the test. The widening gap between those who are able to successfully respond to change and those who are not is validating the value of a digital transformation strategy, most often led by who? The CIO. CIOs have a lot on their plates. We're talking today, it's also a lonely job. And in 2022, I want to just list off a few examples. Even with some workers returning to the office, there'll be many others continuing to work from home. CIOs now need to seek solutions that create equity between those that come back to the office and those that stay home. They have to find ways to make collaboration seamless, especially if you've hired top talent from across the country over the past 2 years. During the heart of the pandemic, CIOs reported a shift of 20% of their organization's processes to digital automation. The goal of most automation is simple: take a manual process and do it instead with software. I think it's a bit more complicated than that, and I think we would all agree that it's not as simple as that. Yet achieving that goal is something that we all strive to do. IT departments are being hit as hard by the Great Resignation. I talked to a few people here that are struggling to find people to work in their industry, as any other group. Keeping great talent working for Canadian companies has become even more difficult with fierce competition for the exceptionally skilled university college students that we develop here in Canada. CIOs need to develop innovative strategies to attract and retain top talent, certainly not a skill set that was needed in a CIO toolbox just a few years ago. And really it goes without saying, CIOs need to be hyper-vigilant when it comes to cybersecurity. With a show of hands, who here has had to deal with a minor, major, somewhat medium cyber incident, at least within the last 3 years? Just a show of hands. Who's had to deal as a CIO? At least one. Okay, there's a few people here. So for those of you who have not, please talk to somebody who has. It really helps you get through that really, really difficult time, the first 2 to 3 days, week, where you're trying to deal with the situation and minimize the risk. Ransomware, it's not going away, and cyber criminals are becoming even more brazen. With just that small list, you can see that it's a tough job and why it's important to honor and learn from the best that we are honoring today. In an effort to broaden the recognition that we bestow upon these individuals, I encourage you to go to Twitter and use #DXAwards to congratulate them and share your thoughts on their accomplishments. We're going to present our first award of the afternoon, but just a little bit about how our winners are selected. IT World Canada and the CIO Association of Canada have partnered to recognize technology leadership at the senior level since 2014. Each year we ask community for nominations of worthy individuals in 4 different categories. And those submissions go to a team of independent judges who review them diligently and then determine the winner. It's not an easy task, and to look at so many individuals who have done so many amazing things and to come up with the finalists. But as I can tell you, as a judge myself, it's a gratifying experience. Just before we get started, I'd like to honor the judging panel. So myself, Gary Davenport here, the past president of the CIO Association of Canada, Jim Love, CIO and Chief Content Officer at IT World Canada, Hamza Tarani, Chief Technology and Digital Officer for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and also the past president of the CIO Association of Canada, Catherine Chick, Senior VP of IT for Canada Goose, Mary Tettelbaum, 2021 Public Sector CIO winner, CIO and VP for the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. I should have practiced this one. Jennifer Cragliata, was that close enough, Gary? Yeah, okay. 2021 Not-for-Profit winner and VP of Healthcare Insurance Reciprocal of Canada. Rita Lazar-Tip, 2021 Next Generation Leader winner, Director of Alberta Pension Services Corporation. So please give a warm hand, a nice hand for those judges and helping make this event possible today. This year's candidates were really impressive. The caliber of the submissions, the quality, the references that were provided were incredible and really made our job as judges extremely difficult. And in fact, there's going to be something odd that we did this year because it was that difficult to do this year, at least in one category. We do make sure that we at least choose one winner, and there were great winners this year for each of the categories. The winners also, by the way, the winners here who will be presented their awards will get the CIO of the Year award induction into the CIO Hall of Fame. So congratulations to you. So I think that's pretty great. And as well, the CIOs, the winners today will get a 1-year membership to the CIO Association of Canada. So welcome to the association. For the winners, we really look forward to you joining the broad CIO family across this great country of ours. They also get a framed certificate of themselves on the digital cover of Canadian CIO. With that said, I'm really honored to present our first award, and the first award is the Next Generation Leader Award. This award was introduced 2 years ago to recognize an up-and-coming technology leader who was punching above their weight class, and given time and the right mentorship, would surely take on technology leadership role at the highest levels within their organizations. This year's winner is a young CIO who works for a 200-person law firm in London, Ontario. He was nominated by the CIO he replaced, which has to be a really great endorsement for that individual. Our winner took over the job just as COVID shutdowns were beginning. Not only did he manage the challenges associated with that, but he's managed the firm's relocation to a new site, replaced its accounting and billing software, no small feat, and is currently guiding a new development team to support a SaaS product for clients who are doing their own security audits. Recognized as resourceful and innovative by his peers, the office relocation effort showcases leadership and his talents. By using technology, hoteling solutions, and online repositories, he was able to relocate the operations to much smaller premises and generate significant savings without any loss of productivity by staff. This year's next generation leader is Matthew Pedalino, CIO, Harrison Penza LLP. Unfortunately, though, today, Matthew was unable to attend today, so we will accept the award on his behalf. Congratulations, Matthew.
I gotta be on site for this. I wanna come, but I gotta be on site. He's got a big move now.
Okay, well, he's busy doing the move, but this is a really nice picture. Now you know who Matthew is. All right. I'm now going to relinquish the podium to one of our key sponsors today of the Digital Transformation Conference, Dynatrace. I'd like to welcome Jeff Pedernos, Enterprise Account Executive at Dynacare. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you, Philippe. Pleasure. And Philippe, thanks for flying from here, from Ottawa. And having said that, let's keep it moving. So this year's non-for-profit winner underscores the power of shared services, collaborations to deliver transformative outcomes for an organization that, on its own, may be too small to achieve these improvements. In particular, it shows that even separately governed organizations with the right leadership can benefit from the shared services model. Our winners organization is based in Chatham, Ontario, and supports 5 acute care hospitals in southwestern Ontario. In the past year, 4 out of 5 of these hospitals shifted from paper records to a fully electronic system through an implementation of an end-to-end digital regional health information system. Our winners team also had to implement and leverage Microsoft Teams across 4 hospitals, provide virtual training tools, and implement an appointment booking system for COVID-19. Want to talk about more results? Here are just some of the other achievement our winners team has been able to accomplish. An 85% adoption rate of computerized provider order entry, greater than 75% adoption of positive patient identification through barcoding, provided closed-loop medication, blood product, and breast milk administration and physician documentation with a single chart, improved patient satisfaction by 20%, improved medication reconciliation on admission and discharge. Healthcare is truly a more or less happening place for digital transformation. Congratulations to our 2022 non-for-profit CIO of the Year, Mazen Jukandar, VP and CIO with Transform Shared Service Organization. Round of applause. Unfortunately, Mazen was unable to attend today, so we will accept this award on his behalf. Again, congratulations, Mazen. Back to you, Philippe.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Congrats, Mazen. I'm now going to turn the podium over to a great colleague and a great friend, a great mentor, and somebody that most of us here in the room know. And Gary was definitely instrumental in this year's CIO of the Year judging team. He's been an active member for many years in many parts of our organization at the CIO Association. But I know the awards program, definitely he's been a leader for that, and it holds a special place in his heart. Gary, if you'd be so kind, come up and present the next CIO of the Year for public sector.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everyone. So this was a very hotly contested category with a razor-thin margin between our winner and some of his rivals. But in the end, all judges agreed that the winner's considerable accomplishments earned him the top spot. Our winner is responsible for infrastructure technology services for the public sector, for public services of Ontario, which with a team of over 1,000 is in of itself a very big and complicated job with many moving pieces. Of course, you throw in a pandemic and it could be overwhelming, but not for our winner. Our winner hunkered down and created the systems that enabled the Ontario government to meet its pandemic health measure commitments, ranging from access to vaccinations to the availability of online test results and the efficient delivery of emergency funds for vulnerable citizens. To help accommodate the rapidly developing hybrid workplace, he expedited the delivery of 11,000 laptops, 7,000 mobile devices, and added 18,000 secure and private networks connections. His team effectively kept over 60,000 Ontario public servants connected to essential applications, their teams, and programs. But wait, there's more. His team set up a number of information hotlines for Ontario residents that were critical in mobilizing the population to respond to the COVID-19 virus, and then helped establish an industry-leading provincial contact center that supported over 5 million calls related to vaccination appointment bookings and general vaccination information. At its peak, this service handled 120,000 calls in a single day and has facilitated 15 million vaccination appointments without fail. When an employee survey identified there were serious threats to his team's morale stemming from systemic inequities and a shortage of opportunities for learning and development, he swung into action on this point as well. He introduced a series of measures, including a people board that rebuilt morale and facilitated a 17% increase in satisfaction in the next employee survey. Amazing results. So please join me in welcoming one of the unsung heroes who gave Ontario the capacity to weather the pandemic, the 2022 CIO of the Year for the public sector, Mohamed Qureshi. Mohamed?
Wonderful. Want to say? Sure. It sounds like I did a lot, but I didn't. There was a great team behind all of that work, and the reality is I just shared some of the ideas. The team really took the bull by the horn and really ran with it. So I just, accepting this award is truly humbling, but I do want to highlight that there was a huge team and a lot of partnerships in delivering it, not just from within the OPS across the ministries, but also with the private sector. So quite a few of our vendor partners that really stepped up to the plate to help weather the storm. So I just want to say a huge thanks, and a huge thanks to my team for putting in the nomination.
Way to go, guys. You want a picture? Okay. Okay, Phil, it's actually back to you.
It's back to me, but congrats, Mohamed, for you, your team, and thank you very much, because all of us who live in Ontario really did benefit from all that work, and especially on the vaccination side. I think that went really, really well. As a consumer, you kind of, and if you're in IT, you're kind of looking as you're doing the consumer business, and you're like, oh, what's behind there? Well, how are they getting this connected to this? How is that talking to this? At least I do that, and I'm sure some of you do that, and you're kind of evaluating, and it all went really, really well as a consumer. So thank you very much to you and your team and the rest of Ontario. Gary, you're going to stay up here with me for the next presentation, because this is where we need two presenters for the next award, and this is where the oddity kind of came out that I talked about before. We had so many great nominations for the private sector CIO category, and it was very difficult. The judges were extremely split, who should be the winner, and it was so tough that we decided this year that two submissions were just equally outstanding, and that we had to, it would be doing a disservice to you and the audience if you didn't hear a little bit about both of those. So if you'll start with the first winner, please. I think that's you, Gary. I guess you start with the first winner, and I'll do the second.
All right. Thanks, Phil. So I'm delighted. Our first winner has had some great accomplishments this year. For example, He led the team responsible for decomposing and rebuilding Canadian Tire's retail e-commerce platform that it could grow from handling 5,000 orders per day to 120,000 orders. This business-critical project, undertaken during the height of the pandemic, accomplished 2 years' worth of work in 6 weeks and resulted in CTC's e-commerce growth of 30%, reaching $2 billion in 2021. Our winner also ensures that IT plays a key role in the fulfillment of larger organizational strategies, including digital options across banners, products, brands, and services, the delivery of valuable digital services to customers that differentiate the retail experience, and managing the development of improved analytics that drive a deeper understanding of its customer. Our winner also contributed to CTC's 2021 operational cost savings of $200 million by instituting a program to remove ROT, R-O-T, redundant, outdated, and trivial systems. As we all know, not easy to do, but a wonderful name to use. So please join me in congratulating Rex Lee, CIO, Canadian Tire, a 2022 CIO of the Year for the private sector. Rex?
Say a few words? Sure. People hear the $200 million, they think, how big is your budget? It's not all IT, it's other cost savings was a big piece of it. The pandemic has been just fascinating. I don't want to say it was a good thing, but it did highlight the importance of technology and the roles that we play. And what a great way to put focus on things like technical debt, inefficiencies, and the acknowledgement that technology isn't just about IT, it's about business, it's about everything that we do. And it's a privilege to be honored amongst this group of folks who get that and understand that and are leading teams across the organizations and across this great country of ours. So thank you.
Congratulations, Rex. Thank you, Gary. Our next winner impressed the judges with the results: her strong capacity for collaboration, her ability to respect and lead a corporate culture. Banque nationale du Canada est la 6e plus grande banque dans notre pays. When our winner was appointed CIO in 2020, it had a large technological debt, ROT. We just discussed that. She saw this legacy as an opportunity to launch a major transformation that would touch every aspect of BCN's operations and impact over 3,000 of its employees. The way she led this transformation was as important as what the transformation achieved. As her colleague Brigitte Hébert, the Executive VP for Employee Experience, attested, when she first started as CIO, she was quickly able to rally and motivate all of her colleagues, members of the boards of directors, through her vision of how we could accelerate our transformation by reducing complexity, promoting automation, rolling out new work models, and a culture based on learning and performance. Customer and employee experiences are central to BCN's transformation. To achieve success, our winner established effective two-way communication that continuously elicits feedback and ideas from employees. In this way, she was able to marshal the whole workforce to achieve significant technological and operational outcomes. Overall, the transformation moved BCN up 6 positions to claim second place in the Canadian Banking Customer Experience Index. Employee satisfaction hit new highs, and the transformation produced more than $87 million in savings over 2 years with an ROE of 21.7%. She's known as an innovator and widely respected for her commitment to diversity and inclusion. Our winner spearheaded a forward-thinking project that hires neuro-atypical people in the data and analytics field. Please welcome CIO of the Year in the private sector winner, Julie Lévesque, CIO and Executive Vice President, Operations, Banque Nationale du Canada. Tiens, est-ce que tu dire une couple de mots?
Yes, thank you so much. A little bit like my colleague from the government of Ontario, my team surprised me with this nomination. I just learned it last week. They rallied up and entitled my coordinator as well, who conveniently removed the email from my inbox, as well as a deleted item because she knew I was quick on the emails. So it was quite a surprise last week when I learned the good news. So very humbled by it, but also, as you mentioned, all the accomplishment. This was a team effort. This is definitely something that we worked for the entire bank. And it's great to work for such a great organization. Banque Nationale is a great employer where we could thrive. I'm the first CIO woman in banking, and this is all due to the great leadership. Very happy and very humbled to be amongst great people. Thank you.
So congratulations, Julie, Rex, Mohammed, Mason, and Matthew, and congratulations to our 2022 Digital Transformation winners honored yesterday. That does wrap up the conference for this year. Stories from the conference are available in the IT World Canada network of publications, and all videos of all the panels and presentations for the past 2 days will be on the site here and available for on-demand viewing. Thank you to all of you here for attending in person. It was very nice to see all of you. I'm looking forward to meeting you after this event and maybe discussing a little bit more. Thank you to the team at IT World Canada for putting on such a wonderful, super event. As well, I want to thank the sponsors, Cloudflare, Dynatrace, TalkDesk, Auth0, and Okta. I also want to thank our supporters, Gartner, and CIO Association of Canada. For those watching the live stream, please complete the conference evaluation that you'll be receiving. It really does help us plan for great events in the future and improving them moving forward. Details and registration opportunities for the IT World Canada flagship events are on the platform, but just to highlight a few before we leave, we have the LGBTQ2S plus Voices in IT, which is going to be on June 21st. Our Canada's Top Women in Cybersecurity celebration is on July 28th. We have the Women in IT luncheon on August 25th, and as well the Analytics Unleashed, which is September 20th. For those CIOs who are with me, let the toast to the winners begin. Be safe, everybody, and have a great afternoon. Okay. So enjoy the reception.